So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of ISCO. I'm very, very happy to say that I've got Susanne Yates with me. So, Susanne, it's been a while since we've actually met face to face. I think it might have even been at Kiental.
Was it
decades ago?
Really? Was it as long ago as that? Maybe not decades ago, maybe 10, 11 years ago, a decade ago. Gosh, I can't believe it was as long ago as that.
No, I can remember we were in Kiental walking backwards and forwards from the residences for the staff, and that walkway through the back there, through the woods. That was a nice time, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, very excited for you to start our day, and I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be nice and practical, which is always good at the beginning of the day. So I'm just going to share your slides, and would you like me to click through for you on the slides?
Yeah, you could. Yes, so I'll tell you what, I'll just raise a hand for the next slide. So, yes, thank you, welcome. Thank you for inviting me, Cliff. And actually, that's a nice image to start with, the walking from the teaching space in Kiental in the beautiful Swiss mountains to present our workshops, because the stepping vessels is all about walking, stepping, coming into the present moment, moving from the yin to the yang, so it's quite a good one for starting in the morning, and adapting to change. Also, it's regulating the day-to-day movement, and especially when things are constantly changing in the outer world, it's they're really helpful vessels to work with. So I felt that they were really appropriate given all the many changes that we're having to integrate in our lives at the moment. And the other thing is also the children, they come into play when we start to walk. And so for me also, it's very much the energy of the joyful, playful child, open and happy and hopefully safe, feeling safe. That's quite an important part. So in fact, before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to do a quick poll to see how many people are already using the stepping vessels in their work. Just before, while you're setting up the poll, the Chinese name is the Yin and the Yang Chao Mai, because stepping vessels is a name that Machiota actually developed, which I think is good because it's that movement, but they're often known as the heel or the ankle vessels, but the Chinese name is the Chao Mai, the Yin and the Yang.
Okay, I'll share the poll. Are you already using the stepping vessels in your work? Yes or no? Let's find out. Looks like it's about 80-20, Susanne, so far.
Great, okay. So let's move on to the next slide.
Okay.
So I've just given an overview again. Of course, stepping is for us at all stages of our lives, stepping through our lives. So meaning of the Chinese name I'm going to talk about. I'll give a brief overview of their pathways, their functions as I understand them, but I also want to share with you an affirmation that I have that I find is really helpful to give to clients, a mudra, a hand gesture to connect with them, and then there'll be a video of exercises that you can do to connect with the stepping vessels, and I've got a video showing you how to work, because it's a bit difficult for me to show live, but I've got a video to give you some ideas. So next slide. So the meaning of the Chinese name, and I chose this picture as well because this joyful child, happy human, it says on the t-shirt, it's that playful quality of energy. So the Chinese character of Chao means foot. So it is very much about how we stand on the earth. This is why I have pictures of people standing outside, but children. Our first connection with the earth when we uncurl from the fetal position and, now our arms are free and we can play. So the two Chao Mai, the yin and the yang, they concern the lower limbs and they begin at the foot. I've deliberately got bare feet today because it really is that stepping action, and they're two of the key points. If only you remember a couple of things, think of the ankle and all the kidney and bladder points around the ankle. And then there's a movement of rising up from the feet to connect with something delicate at the top. Because of course, once we can stand, our arms are free to do lots of other things, including flying, which is the linking vessels more. Anyway, so there's a connection between the feet and the arms, which are now free, and the brain, which is a core part of the extraordinary vessels. And obviously the brain is important because it's how do we integrate this information that's coming in. And another key point on the stepping vessels is bladder 1, the inside corner of the eyes, because obviously if we're running around, we need to see where we're going. And just that action, again, it's a very simple thing you can include in your work of getting clients to open their eyes and close their eyes. So if we're working with people that their eyes are always open, it can be good, but that's showing actually that the yin chow is not functioning correctly and they're not able to go more inward. So that inside point, bladder 1, will come to that as well. And so there's a rapidity because the brain is constantly is processing information, but there is also something rooted about it. So the next slide will show that, okay, so just as a test, the trick slide, these are not actually the chow vessels, because I actually feel that the diagrams that we currently have of the extraordinary vessels, which are primarily drawn by acupuncturists who are obviously more interested in just the points, but not really the nature of the pathway. These pictures, I think I put one in the handout, so you have got some handouts, because I know that maybe you can't all quite see the detail. But if you just look at it, what I'm trying to show in the diagrams is the vessels, all of the extraordinary vessels, have this connection to the earth. So the way the linking vessels is actually more of a connection to heaven, but they all connect to earth, which is why I've got the roots going into the earth, the connection that our physical body, we're not just working with our physical body, but the connections that we have in space. So earth is an important connection, also the connection to heaven. And each group of extraordinary vessels has a different connection to heaven. The other aspect I want you to see is that the channel is actually not a thin line. We'll get onto the chow picture in a moment, but it's much broader in its nature. So hopefully you can see that on these. And then I also wanted to indicate for all of the extraordinary vessels, for me, there are 4 what I call core organs, which are the reproductive organs, the heart, the kidneys. Well, the kidneys, yeah, I may need to adjust this picture, but the kidneys, more Ming men, the ancestral energy, and the brain. And that's the broadness of the channel, the core organs. The direction of flow is much more spiralic in nature. It's not, in fact, the chow isn't just coming from the earth, it's also how we then process that in the brain and how we then reconnect with the earth. So there is this more spiraling two-way movement. And I've already talked about the connection to heaven and earth. So now, in a moment, we'll see the diagrams of the heel or the stepping or the chow vessels, the traditional ones, because I've basically been working to get what I feel are more expressive diagrams of the pathways, but I haven't managed to do it yet for the chow. So now you'll see the difference when we click to the next slide.
I think they're really good, Susanne. I think these diagrams are so much closer to what we actually feel when we get in touch with the energetics, aren't they?
Yeah.
I always thought the Chinese pathways, the acupuncture pathways, are so kind of dull, really. They're so two-dimensional, aren't they? They just don't bear any relation. It's really, really, really brilliant work.
Oh, thank you, Cliff. Yeah, exactly. Then you see this, and then partly also why I did it was I was always getting people to experience, you know, the broadness, the vastness of the vessel, but then I was only able to give them diagrams like this, and they'd always kind of like, when they look at the diagram, they just see this thin line, and so you see, so what you see when you first look at it, especially, so the yin is on the left, the yin chow, there aren't actually many points for most of the pathway. There's 3 points near the ankle, and they're all kidney points, and then there's stomach 12, stomach 9, and bladder 1. So they're all really, like I said in that previous one, around the clusters of points around the feet, and then their connection to the brain. Also, I don't like this diagram because it doesn't have the arms, and there is a connection with the arms. So anyway, that's the yin, and then the right hand side is the yang, and you'll see again there's 3 bladder points around the ankle, and then there's a point in the pelvis, because of course when we're walking we're connecting back into the pelvis, and so actually to walk we need to have a certain strength in our bones. For me, there's very much a strong connection with the bones, and as I say on this slide, most of the points are on or close to bones. And so the ankle, that's why they sometimes are called the ankle, because the main points are kidney 6 on the inside and bladder 62 on the outside, and they're on the pathway, and they're also regulating points. So I'll just explain the regulating points. Each of the extraordinary vessels has a point which may or may not be on its actual pathway, which is said, if an acupuncturist often will use this point as a way of working the whole vessel. Sometimes they're called, what are they called? Because I like to call them regulating points, opening points. But then I stopped using that because people think you open them and then you have to close them. And it's more like a kind of portal, a way in. So that's why I say regulating. And the regulating points aren't actually always on the pathway. The regulating point, for example, of the girdle vessel, which many of you may know, well, no, actually I'll do the conception vessel, because we all know the conception vessel, is actually lung 7. So it's not on the pathway, but of course, the conception vessel very much is regulating heart and the lungs. But that's interesting for the challenge, shows the importance of the ankle, that the regulating point is also on its pathway, bladder 62 and kidney 6. And then for the yang, you've got a few points in the shoulder, because of course there is a connection to the arms, even if there aren't points in the arms, because as we're walking, we already saw that. We're moving our arms, we may be coordinated or not coordinated, but the arms are part of that flow through the body. So bones, the pelvis, also the shoulders, which then links to the arms, then the clavicle. Now there is a shared point, they both connect with stomach 9. And then there's quite a few, the stomach points, interestingly on the yang, there's all the stomach points from 1 to 4, and it also goes to bladder 1. So this is also an interesting thing with the extraordinary vessels. Unlike the 12 channels or meridians, some of them share points. So the yin and the yang both share stomach 9 and bladder 1. And that's really the switch for the yin and the yang. And bladder 1 connects into the brain, and especially at the level of the pituitary gland, and how we sort of regulate light and dark and yin and yang. And anything else I need to say? Yeah, and the yang has a few points on the shoulders, large intestine, and bones. The bones are on the shoulders. So I think that's all I want to say on that slide.
I remember I actually have used this channel now. Now I think about it, because I've used it for regulating the eyes. I remember I did research it when I was working with some clients who had some problems with the eyes. The yin and the yang connections are very powerful, aren't they? Especially from, I remember now that I had this technique where I held bladder 62 and kidney 6 together and kind of zapped the energy up towards the eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do anything like that.
Yeah, I do. And also I find that's the thing, when you're working, you can hold the points at the feet, and then if you have that image of connecting it through to the eyes, you don't necessarily have to touch the eyes. But I find also it's a very good way for clients at the end of a session, if you've done very deep work, it can bring them back to help them to make that transition, because it's really all about transitions in a quite immediate way. So that transition from being, deeply within their body to then then how they're going to move out of the treatment room. And I quite often either finish at the heels now or at
Yes.
the eye.
Yes.
It lets go at the eye these days because we're not doing so much work on the face, but you know, the eye is also good. Or as something to give to a client, to hold their eyes, or to hold it, to be really aware of the ankle. So we better get on to the next slide if that's okay, but great, it's nice to hear that you've been using it. And this is a bit of a continuation of the other slides. So just to clarify, the yin does connect very closely to kidney. All the extraordinary vessels are very linked with kidney and the ancestral energy, and obviously kidney is very linked to the bones. Yang also connects quite closely to the bladder. I didn't mention the spine, but obviously our spine and the whole movement of the bladder energy is quite important in the stepping. I've already said about the sharing points. I thought it was worth repeating it because if those of you who don't work with them, it's quite a lot to take in. But the main things are, repeating again, the eyes, the brain and the pituitary gland, but also the throat, stomach 9 and the earth. But that's another interesting thing I find about the extraordinary vessels, is that some of the yin vessels have what we might think of as more yang points, you know, bladder 1 and stomach 9, but they're on a yin vessel. And and some of the yang, like the girdle vessel, has yin points. So they're much more complex than the 12. And of course, stomach 9 and then stomach 12 for the yin, it's about our connection to the earth, and they're very much in the day-to-day. And so for me, out of all the extraordinary vessels, these are the pair that most connect with the present moment. And then the yang chow, or the yang stepping, actually also shares points with the yang wei, which I point that out because sometimes people get quite confused, because they both have this gallbladder 29 point on the pelvis, which makes sense because they're both, you know, it's connecting into what I now call the inner four, the girdle vessel, the du and the ren, conception, governing and penetrating vessel. They also both share, I didn't mention it in the last slide, the small intestine 10 point, which, as we all know, is a very important point for regulating the shoulder. Why is it such an important point? Well, for me, it's because it connects in with the extraordinary vessels. So small intestine 10 is both on the yang chow and on the yang wei. And also, so that's the shoulder. And then gallbladder 20, well, that's an important point, as we know, for regulating the head, the skull and the brain. And again, even if you don't work with extraordinary vessels, I'm sure that's the point you use a lot. Oh, I've already done the hips. I did it in a different order. Great.
Okay. Would you like another slide?
Another slide, sorry, another slide. So
Yeah.
I've kind of woven the function through what I've been talking about already, but I thought it would be helpful to have a slide to just really clarify it all. So it's very much about regulating the present moment, and the eyes as an organ of time, as well as sight, the time connection to the brain. And we also know that, you know, how much we sleep and how much we are awake is very much dependent on the amount of light. It helps us regulate, you know, the cycles of time in our life. Going now, as we are into more winter time, there's less yang energy, although compared with the ancient Chinese, we have all our lights and stimulation. And actually that kind of explains why the yang chow tends to be a bit overactive, because light and time are very stimulating for the brain, and we can get disorientated. And so it's the moment-to-moment adjustment between yin and yang, very much related to the sleep-wake cycle. So anyone that has any issues with sleep, I know we often think of the heart and the shen, but really the chow is quite important to consider, because as we all know, yin, nighttime, sleep, rest, reflection, and closing the eyes is a very simple way to help to regulate that. Yang, daytime activity, reaction, opening the eyes. To just say that it's a really good way to help regulate all the yin channels and all the yang channels, because sometimes if we're only working with the 12 channels, we feel, well, this is how I came to the vessels, that I need to work with all the yin and all the yang. They're all a bit out of balance. All the yin are underactive and all the yang are overactive. Well, work the Chow. And it is about our relationship between our inner world and our outer world, and relates very much to our basic physical posture, which also reflects our emotional and psychological being. What is our basic connection to the earth, especially these days, I think, in times of not just pandemic, when we can see the outside world as quite a threatening place, but also climate change and all the things that are going on with the outer world. It's important to find how can we really support our connection with the outer world in a positive and hopefully joyful way. And how we stand, how do we take our place in the world?
Yes.
And the bones, joints, ligaments and tendons. And it tends to be a bit more used for excess patterns because it's that whole reaction. It's a quicker moving energy. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't have more deficient patterns within it.
Mm.
So yes, I thought it'd be helpful to give you a bit of an idea of overactive patterns and underactive patterns, clearly because of the balance between yin and yang. If the yang is overactive, then the yin is likely to be underactive. So I framed it as a kind of little phrase, and you've got this in your handout, because I just feel it makes it more direct and easy to connect with. So I'm constantly on the alert. This is the over-adrenal, and reacting to changes without having assessed the situation. You know, someone typically runs into a room and, whoa, maybe it's not safe. I find it hard to stand back and to slow down. It's likely that the earth does not feel safe or nourishing for me, and I find it hard to go to sleep.
Mm.
And then the underactive yang with an overactive yin, I'm slow to respond to what is happening outside me. I often enter unsafe situations without realizing until it's too late. So too inward and not able to sense what's going on in the outer world. And I find it hard to wake up. This is just to give you a bit of a flavor of, what's the overall quality. So the next slide is, Did you want to ask something, Cliff, or is that okay?
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah.
And they are in the handout, so you can go back and listen. So I've developed these mudras, hand gestures, because I find it's quite good, especially for the Chow, for people to have something simple, that if they can't necessarily always do the exercises, they can connect. And so you make a fist and then you extend your thumb, which is the lung and the spleen, the yin, because, yes, I have to explain this. The regulating point pairs with the regulating point of another vessel, so that the Chow pair with the governing and conception vessel. So lung, and then the spleen, it's that connection to the earth. And then the index fingers, which we can see connect with the heart and the small intestine. So small intestine is the main regulating point for governing vessel, but also bladder, if you work with bladder, small intestine connection. So I also feel in the hand, that's kind of like sensing the outer world, but we also need the yin connecting in and protecting the heart. If we want to be more open, we can have the hands up. And if we want to be more down, we can have the hands down. So I just show that now I've got the picture on the slide. Maybe just take a moment to rest your hands on your knees and let your body absorb a bit what I've just been talking about. And notice if you want to have your eyes closed or open. Maybe closed because you've probably had them open a lot, looking at me, looking at the screen. So perhaps close your eyes, turn your hands down to the earth. Just become aware of your body and go into the connection with the yin Chow, the slow breath, feeling your body and the connection that you have to earth in the sitting position. If you're lying down, you could even lie down. Your feet would be not connected to the earth. You're just resting. And in this resting place, I will just say an affirmation that I've created. I am fully present in each moment. I connect you to the daily rhythms of the sun and the moon, night and day. And so now I invite you to take your time to slowly open your eyes again and notice how is that transition of going from inside your body to outside your body. And then maybe you could turn your hands palm upwards, so that sort of also brings you more into the space and the light. And then we're going to move into some exercises for the stepping. So while we go on to the next slide and put up that video for you, which I will do with you, you can now take, oh sorry, I've got an activity before. So yes, but just to say, while I'm explaining that, we're going to be doing a video in a moment and some exercises. So the stepping vessel exercises is balancing the in-breath with the out-breath, balancing rest with action. If you always rush, try slowing down. If you tend towards slowness, try walking at a brisk pace. Practice presence, observing and sensing what is around you. So now, if you know you tend to rush, really try and slow yourself down as you come to standing. And if you tend to be a bit slow, then you might want to go a bit quicker. I'm just going to stand because also it's nice to stand, but you will have a video now coming up of some stepping vessel exercises.
Okay, would you like me to just play the video now?
Let's play the video now. And
okay, are we going to mute our, let's mute our cameras and mics.
Yes, mute,
yeah.
sorry.
I can do that for you, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Hello, I'm Susanne Yates, and today I'm going to show you the stepping vessel exercises. And I've decided to do this outside because the stepping vessel is very much about how we stand on the earth and how we step and how much we're able to be present in each moment. So while I'm explaining it a bit, maybe just stand, but the idea of the stepping is it's very much about movement. So we're not going to be standing still. I want you to feel the connection of moving from your heel, sometimes it's known as the heel vessel, and then feel how that movement comes into your pelvis. And we can alternate that while I just explain some of the points. So feeling this connection with the earth, with the movement of the heel, also just letting that flow into the rest of your body, flowing up into your hips and your pelvis, and just let your shoulders be relaxed and let your arms move as well. So stepping vessel, the capacity to be present, to be in the moment, and to make moment-to-moment adjustments. So play around, be fluid, very much links in with the bones. Maybe I'll even move a tiny bit. You can step forward, so you can do this in a bigger way, just focusing on stepping forwards and stepping backwards and feeling the difference with the movements. So heel vessel or stepping is very linked with the heel, and in fact maybe we'll slow that. If we slow the stepping movement down, so you're balancing on one leg, you can feel the heel in the air. Maybe you could even do a few movements with your heel to feel. Those are the starting points. There's several points around the heel, both on the inside and the outside, and that connection with space. But after a while, you probably find that this leg that's supporting you is getting tired because it's having to make moment-to-moment adjustments. So feel those moment-to-moment adjustment. Just place that other foot down and feel the difference as you shift a connection through into the centre and then the other side. The heel coming up, the movement in space, and then the moment to moment adjustments that are happening in the muscles of this leg, in the meridians or channels, and therefore also into the pelvis. So that's the basis of all our movements that we're going to be doing today. Stepping. It really is that simple, but now I want you to feel the connection to the pelvis as you step. So placing your hands on the bones of your pelvis and feel that action with the pelvis as you rock through in the movement. Then coming back to the centre, that's quite important, that's bringing it back to the midline. And then coming to the other side, again feeling the connection with the pelvis and the rocking movement through into the heel of the foot that's coming onto the ground. And of course, when we're stepping, when we're walking, there's not just a movement of the pelvis, there's a movement into the shoulders. And there are some quite important points here. So while I'm doing this, you might want to be actually walking around. I'm staying on one spot because it's easier to show the exercise, but you could actually, I mean, I'll just demonstrate this briefly, you could actually be walking around, playing with different speeds of walking, walking faster, walking slower, maybe even doing some walking with your eyes closed and see how that feels. Walking backwards as well. So all those different movements you can be playing around with, while I'm also getting you to focus on the shoulders. So with the shoulders, it's very much, again, the bones, the heel, the leg, the pelvis, the bones of the shoulder. So you might want to actually place your fingertips on your shoulders, really feel those big bones, the clavicle, the acromion process, and there's some key points here with the bones and the joints. So feel this movement. Just connect with the bones here for a moment, but then go more into the stepping movement with the arms. So with the arms, it's just letting them move from the joints as you step forward. And again, I'm just going to do a few steps here because I don't want to move too much, but feeling that connection with the arms is quite an important part of this. I'm doing it a little bit stiffly just to emphasize it, but try and feel a fluidity as you're walking and stepping with this movement, forwards and backwards. So the next part to focus on are the eyes. So the eyes, actually, sorry, before we get to the eyes, the eyes are an important part, but the bones here, but we've also got the throat. So I'm just holding the throat to show you. You can still keep moving with your arms. I want you to be really aware of your throat and the connection with the clavicle. There's a little hollow here, those of you who know stomach 1, stomach 12. And that, if you feel that you're, as we focus more on the upper body, you're losing your connection to the earth, you might want to actually feel this little dip in the middle of the collarbone, the clavicle, and just have a gentle pressure coming down. That's a very good way. It's the stomach, it's the earth, it's an anchoring down to the earth. So at any point, if you feel things are going a little bit too much up, then just bring everything down through connecting with this point. You can also allow yourself to focus on your throat and maybe even make a sound as you're open the throat as you're stepping forwards and backwards. But we come to the last point of this vessel. So it starts at the heels, stepping, and it finishes at the eyes, both the yin and the yang stepping vessels. So there's one that's coming up the inside of the leg and one that's coming up the outside of the leg. One that's coming up the front of the body, one that's coming more through the side of the body, perhaps you can try to feel those, but they're very broad energies. You don't have to be too specific. Just feel the inside and the outside of the leg, the front and the sides of the body, the shoulders, the areas that I've just described. And finally we come to the eyes. This is a nice easy point to find. It's both for the yin and the yang, the front and the back, and it's the inside corner of the eye. And you may, as you're walking, want to just place your hand there for a moment, really stimulate the inside corner of the eye as you carry on with your stepping action. And then, this is the final thing, as you walk now, I examined this briefly at the beginning, just close your eyes and see how that feels to walk. You'll probably have to go a bit slower, but as you walk around either forwards or backwards with your eyes closed, really take your time to feel first the connection with the earth. How do you place first your heel and then the sole of the foot? And then how do you lift the leg? How do you transfer the weight to then come into the other foot and then place the weight down? And keep feeling that movement, starting with the feet, but moving all the way up into the pelvis, the shoulders, the throat, and the eyes. You can explore that for a while. You can pause this video if you want. So next one I'm going to do for you is the balancing one we did at the beginning, but you're going to do it with your eyes closed. So start with that stepping movement, lifting up, your eyes open, and then close your eyes and feel how you have to, that supporting leg has to work even more. Your arms can help you. Be aware of what's going on in your shoulders. Some days you'll find this easier than others. Come back to the center and then do that movement to the other side. Eyes closed, eyes open. Just feel the difference and what's happening in your body. And then just repeat that a few times if you want, and pause, close your eyes, and just feel how your whole body is being stimulated through these simple movements and through your awareness of the different parts of your body. And then before we finish, I just want you to just shake through all these areas we've been working, just shaking through your foot, a bit through your hips, a bit through your shoulders, blinking your eyes quite quickly, then placing down, coming to center, then shaking through the other side. Really feel that movement from the heel, up the inside and outside of the leg, into the pelvis, into the shoulders, into the throat and the mouth and the eyes. And then pause again, closing your eyes. And then simply, when you're ready, walk and see how that might have changed your approach to walking. But do remember to come back to center. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you something though. Walking's never going to be the same again now.
Great. Can you hear me now?
Sorry?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Okay, so I think it might be good to go straight into the next video.
Okay.
Yeah?
All right. So let's mute our video again.
The heel vessels. So it's nice to start with holding the heel and maybe even just leaning back a bit and doing a little bit of stretch to get the movement, the connection with the hips and the pelvis. But then you can start doing the movement, so moving your body to get the stepping action with your partner. You could stay even longer doing that. You could sense, do you want to be doing stepping or more still? And then we can connect with the points, which are the main regulating points. Kidney 6, which is, we feel the bones. So actually, in fact, even to help you locate the points, you could do a little bit of movement with the bones of the ankle, and then gradually feeling the kidney point below the ankle bone on the inside and the bladder point below the ankle bone on the outside, and holding the two together, because here you can sense what's the connection between the yin and the yang. And you might even want to move up a bit to get a better angle, even getting a little bit of movement here. But you hold the point statically, but you might feel a bit of movement. And feeling which is fuller, which is emptier. Which one do you want to work first? The yin or the yang? But often it's quite good to work both together. Actually, I'm feeling working both together, perhaps. So you can spend a while on kidney 6, bladder 62. I'm doing a little bit the movement. And then the other points that we've got. On the inside, got kidney 2, which is more here. And that's not necessarily actually so easy to do at the same time. So you might have to at some point switch to doing both the yin, kidney 2 here, yeah, here, and just connect more generally with the yang if you're able. So, and then you can do, I can just about connect kidney 2 with bladder 62. But it doesn't feel such a good connection. So sometimes I decide to just then work one foot so I can keep that yin and yang connection. So you could be stepping and then holding just the one side, kidney 6 and bladder 62. The other hand's really holding the heel and getting this, then you can get the stepping action. And then you could hold kidney 2, and you might be able to hold bladder 61, which is just down from bladder 62. That works quite well. Depends on the size of the foot. So I'm holding the point statically, but I'm moving my body more dynamically. And then I could also come up to bladder 59, which is 3 soon above bladder 60, and then also feel this kidney point on the inside at the same time, and that would be 2 soon above, and it's on the bones. So again, you're often feeling bones when you're working the stepping vessel. So I could stay longer, but I could also decide I want to switch perhaps to work both the yin. So I'll do this quicker, but just to show you other combinations. You could do both the kidneys at the same time and not so much the yang. You could do maybe both the yang and not so much the yin. And obviously if you're doing one side yin and yang, then you come to do the other side yin and yang. So those are our 6 points at the feet, and there aren't then any points. It's really a whole movement of stepping. So we could just do that movement up into the hips. So focus more on the up movement, coming up, alternate legs. But I actually quite like to do it with more of a stepping and really feeling the bones. So you come more into this stepping movement we did at the beginning. But then this time, again, provided the legs are okay, you can actually start to come a bit higher. Your knees feel okay in that movement. So I have got a bit of traction in the back, and I'm just doing this alternating movement. But at some point we can actually rest the heels onto our legs and then get more of a stepping by bringing the knees. So if someone wasn't so comfortable with the previous one, really get hold of the bones of the knee. There aren't points around here, but it's quite good to have that connection between the bones of the ankle, the bones of the knee, and the bones and joints of the hips and pelvis. So you might be doing more of a movement like this, both together, or you just change your body, just check that's not twisting too much in the pelvis and it's comfortable for your partner. Is that okay, doing alternate movements? Great. Then you could let the legs drop a little bit, come more now to the knees. As I said, there aren't points at the knees, but there are connections, especially through the bones. So here, then you might feel the bones. So notice I've changed my position, keeping the knees together because I'm going to actually now start to make the connection with the pelvis. This is gallbladder 29 into the bone of the pelvis. Obviously it's a bit harder to keep on with that stepping action and also hold. So we can't completely do the stepping action, but we just do a little bit, a little bit mimicking that side movement. So I'm holding with my fingers, got my thumbs holding also the bones more at the front. And that brings that connection in. I could be rocking a bit with my body. And then I could work through my partner's hands perhaps, and just connect with the bones of the ribs and the chest, coming up to the bones of the shoulder and the clavicle. And the clavicle, we've actually got stomach 12 here, which I could even hook a bit into from this position. I could still do a bit of the stepping movement of the pelvis. And then I can come along to feel the acromion and the outer part, and this is large intestine 15, and then we've also got large intestine 16 and large intestine 15. Large intestine 16 is the great bone. So actually sometimes it's quite nice to move the bones like we move our shoulder when we're walking, and that way you can often feel where the point is. You sort of sink into this dip in the bone, but even it's the whole area, and then you can start to, so the stomach 12 is yin, and large intestine 16 and 15 is the yang. Then you could come down into the arms. You could even take the arms, again, really feeling the bone, the bony part of the arm, the joints of the elbow. There's a lot of joints and bones. And then coming, feeling the bones of the thumb. Points are, linking points here, lung 7 and small intestine 3. The final points. You might not be able to do them both at the same time, but you can switch. And again, really feeling that connection with the bone. Spending longer here if you, well, spend as long here as you need. And then we'll start to put the legs down. So sometimes we can also do this other movement with the legs up here. And that might be, that's also just an alternative way of having the legs. I mean, I'm not so symmetrical and I don't get quite so much movement in the hips, but you could do it that way and come down the arms to the bones. And then we put the legs down, and then we can transition from the pelvis to the shoulders and work on the head. So now at the head, then I arrive at the head. This shoulder's quite a lot tighter, so we just ease. So you can see you can do these points from this angle. You've got the large intestine, great bone, top of the shoulder, maybe with the point or maybe with the palm of the hand, maybe again that walking movement, the arm movement that accompanies the leg walking movement. What we can do from here is we can slide underneath the shoulder and come into the small intestine point, also against bones. Small intestine 11, you follow up the crease from the axilla, and then you can, again, you could maybe even do a little bit of movement with that, because stepping is quite an active movement. And then maybe you could even, so I've got my index finger in, hold the two at the same time. That's a really nice release for the shoulders, for joints, for deeper issues, maybe arthritic shoulders. And then we might possibly, I can't quite, with Bram, some people you might be able to reach the stomach 12 point. Also at the same time as small intestine 10, or maybe you need to come to the large intestine point. It's often quite good to combine 2 points, because that really brings in the dynamic aspect of the extraordinary vessels. 2 points from 2 different channels. And then that's quite a good release. And then the throat, stomach 9. So it may, you have to see with people, small intestine, sorry, stomach 12 is just for the yin, but small intestine, sorry, stomach 9 is both together. So this is connecting the yin and the yang. So you could just hold here, or again, depending on the size of the head, you could connect with gallbladder, I can't really do that one here, but gallbladder 20 at the back, and maybe just a gentle connection with the, connecting more with the movement of energy into the head. So you could do a little bit of just stretching the head as you're walking. You might be turning and looking, lifting your head. And then that's the yang. Perhaps you can stay connected with gallbladder 20. I can just about reach the stomach. I don't think I'm going to be able to reach bladder 10, bladder 1, but you could just use this to connect the stomach points. This is coming more into the yang, coming up, because this is the mother hand on gallbladder 20, and you just gradually work up. So my thumbs could be firmer here, and then you come to stomach 1 where it's connecting with penetrating vessel. This is more the yang, and then you could maybe switch to the yin and the yang. That's bladder 1. Again, bone, you see, really feeling the bone of the jaw, of the head, of the eyes. And I just hold bladder 1, the 2 sides. This is yin and yang together. And often I do let my fingers just rest on the stomach, but also I might come into the connection back to the center line, to the brain, and to governing vessel, which is paired through the regulating points. And I could finish there. I could just visualize a connection with the feet, or I may go back through some of the connections I've already done, where I could connect down through lung 7 and small intestine, and then connect it to the feet, kidney 6 or bladder 62, or I could just move down to the feet and finish at the heels. But it's also fine to finish at the head.
There we go. Wasn't that an amazing video? That was great. I'll just get Susanne to connect back up with her camera and her audio. And time is flying. We've only got 5 minutes left.
I'm aware of that. Can you hear me now?
They were great. I tell you what, Susanne, walking is never going to be the same again for me now. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, it's great, isn't it? Because it's a really simple thing that we can give for not only for ourselves, but for our clients as well. And I think simplicity is often good.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's something we do quite a lot of walking around. So, I mean, we've got plenty of time, plenty of opportunities to practice it, haven't we?
Exactly.
But I thought that was great, that routine you did. I mean, I've used those points on the feet, but I've never thought about actually linking it all together in a session. I'm definitely going to play around with that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good idea.
Great.
Okay, so let's have a look. What have we got next?
Right, yeah, we've done
video. Yeah.
And then
Oh yeah, okay. So are there any questions? We've just got a few minutes left.
Yeah, sorry, we kind of got a bit over enthusiastic, didn't we?
No, that's absolutely fine. It's worked out brilliantly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll just, I've got Basti in the monitoring the chat. So here is Christina's question. Would it be possible to share the video with the community? Can we share the video out?
Well, definitely the stepping, they're on my YouTube channel. So stepping vessels is a public video anyway. The exercise, the actual practical, I think I've done as unlisted. But yeah, I don't mind. It's fine. It's part of an online course that I've got on the extraordinary vessels, but I think that's fine. Yeah.
Just a reminder, of course, is it will be part of this whole presentation that will be loaded up on your energy work anyway, so you'll be able to do that. Okay, Emma, we've got a question from Emma. Any signs to look for in a client that would indicate we should work the stepping vessels? So how would you spot that?
Well, that's the thing that I was saying. It's really how are they able to make transitions, the kind of day-to-day transition? Are they rushing in and out of rooms? You know, do you have a client that's always rushing and you know then the yang is overactive? Or are they all late, then the yin? And it's like the basic yin and yang, sleep, wake patterns, overall balance between yin and yang. I would say go back to some of those over and active patterns that I said, because I noticed someone also asked about shoulder complaints, because I also feel it's really important for shoulder complaints as well.
You do,
that combination of the small, I mean, getting the movement of small intestine 10 with, especially with large intestine 15, I kind of play around with the connections like I was doing a bit in the video of like combining the different points, because that's the power of the extraordinary vessels, that they're linking together, even though this isn't the linking channel, but they all link together energies of the 12 meridians. And we all know that shoulder issues are rarely one of the 12 meridians, are they? They're usually a combination.
Combination, definitely, yeah.
But seeing if that combination of the stepping vessels helps, and is the shoulder point, because especially if it's to do with bone, arthritis, or those kind of issues, it's really powerful for that. Menstruation irregulation, it will be relevant. I mean, stepping vessels, to be honest, are relevant for everybody, because I'm sure we all have, it's about being present. But with menstruation, I would usually find stepping vessels isn't enough, because it's about then of the menstruation, it's about the blood flow. I mean, it depends what issues are going on with menstruation, but usually I will also need to do work with the chong, the penetrating, or the GERD or the dye. But you can see, like, if you just do the stepping, you're going to feel at some point you want to do a bit more on the heart, on the kidneys, on this whole sort of central part. So yes, you can with combination, but stepping for someone that's finding it, even with food issues which can be related to menstrual cycles, like PMS and all that kind of stuff, when the body is finding it a bit hard to regulate the shift between the yin and the yang. So again, at various points in the cycle, that shift from maturing the egg to then releasing the egg, so around ovulation, that can be quite good to help that shift. And also around menstruation, particularly a good time to include the stepping vessels.
Okay, we're running out of time, but let's just have a post-COVID clients and fatigue. That's a very topical question.
Yes, to come back into regulating their pattern of their daily balance after the the stresses. And actually stepping, I haven't mentioned that, have I? All of the extraordinary vessels are about our way key, our defensive key, and obviously, you know, lung is the paired point of the yin, and it is about how we're relating to the outer world. So it's actually good, I would say, for strengthening the immune system after COVID, but also supporting the immune system so that we can resist COVID.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. We're absolutely out of time. We've got a few more questions, but we're going to answer them in chat for you, Susanne. I just want to say thank you so much. I just want to say thank you so much. We've got loads and loads of appreciation. I'm sure if you look in the chat, you'll see lots of hearts going streaming past. People really loved it. They love your slides. They love the clarity and the fact that it was really practical. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope we meet face to face.
Yeah, in real space. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much.
Bye.